Hello and welcome to Mandibil, and welcome to a direct transmission from the philosophical couch of Mandibil, from his channel, The Perfect Principle. Well. Not after just having uploaded critical videos about integrated information theory, and my continuing criticism of Bernardo Kastrup. And in the first video about IIT, integrated information theory, I was, using videos from Koch. And lo and behold, of course, they meet up and create a video, right? Bernardo Kastrup versus Koch, right? Koch, sorry. And of course, what do they discuss? They discuss integrated information theory at minutes 7:59. First, they are bonding, right? The bond between Koch and Kastrup. What is it with this? It sounds like the creation theory of between Fred Master and Bernardo Kastrup. There's these bonds. What are those? Right? Where does that fit into your ontology? How? The bond? Yes, we are bonding. It's like I'm not sure how to explain the feeling I get from, and that's just my gut feeling, right? But it's like when you say that there's a bond between these people, there are some sophist connotations, in the sense of we have behind the curtain, we have discussed some things and we have come to an agreement. We are not necessarily going to disclose that agreement to you, but we're just bonding, right? This sort of woo-woo kind of. Is it a philosophical discord, or are you sort of, rubbing each other's backs? It's just, I don't like this, right? Now, I know this is not, this is on something called Phidias podcast. So I guess it could be said that it is Phidias, this dude here, right? It's his, what would that call, second-hand description of it, right? Okay, I might go with that and say, okay, fair enough, right? But then he is a proponent of what is going on, right? He's stating what is going on. So he's participating in it, right? And, it's not the first time this guy has interviewed, and I've seen some other interviews with this guy. He is a weirdo. I mean, it's just my personal. Maybe I should actually subscribe to the channel. Done. And I have liked it. And I'm going to share it, of course, down below, right? He's just strange. He's sort of this, the borderline between genius and craziness is thin, right? Either he's a brilliant genius or he's sort of a moron, right? He comes across as, I'm sorry to say, he comes across as moronic to me, right? He doesn't seem to. He has a few insights into this, that, and the other, but it's not. It's superficial, right? Why is he there? He's sitting there in, I think this is Bernardo Kastrup's living room. What is it? Is it because he's a useful idiot or what? I'm just, and I have a notion that those people that are hired to function or push the agenda of the Essentia Foundation are usually people who are either deeply confused, religious, or just half stupid, useful idiots, right? I think this guy is the third category, right? I'm just being honest here, right? I can't see why you would want. If I had some kind of organization where I'm building a reputation and so on, I would try to get the fucking best people in the possible world, both to interview me, but also to criticize me and build the shit up and so on, right? Like, Steve Jobs said once, if you're a B player, you would want to hire A players, right? You would want to hire somebody who's better than you, who can tell you how to do shit, right? You don't want to hire C players, right? Stupid idiots who won't challenge you, who are worse than you, from whom you can't learn anything. And then you could possibly get into what Steve Jobs called the bozo explosion, which is B players hiring C players hires then D players, and D players hires E players, and then it's bozos all the way down, right? This is sort of a bozo explosion initiation, right? Let's get some stupid people in who doesn't challenge our magical thinking, right? Good luck with that. I mean, all power to you. Just do it. I mean, I don't want Essential Foundation to get anywhere, right? That's one of the things, one of the aspects of the modern ways using the internet to create a discourse about various shit, right? Rather than you having to sit in your living room with one television channel that is basically, government propaganda to get your daily dose of bullshit, right? You can actually connect with people directly, and they can choose to listen to you, or they can choose not to listen to you, or criticize you, and so on, right? I really, really, really like that idea, right? And that's not exactly an argument, but if it's the freedom to say what you want, be that an argument or not, and then other people can come and call you out for your bullshit, right? And you could say that I appreciate the openness, or the, to some extent at least, openness of Essential Foundation at Bernardo Kastrup, though he's very good at juggling words, right? He's very good, and he has these genetics of a used car salesman, right? Which is basically the scum of the earth, right? I mean, I've spoken to a few car salesmen, and they are. I mean, I've no and what are they called? Real estate agents. They're full of shit, right? They're so full of shit. Car salesmen, they will lie through their teeth, right? No problem. They have no scruples, right? Most of them. There are maybe some that are more honest than others, right? But car salespeople, they are usually not the most, what's the term? Never mind. You know what I mean. No need to get into that, right? Okay, so on Phileas' podcast, they're sitting in Bernardo Kastrup's living room, as far as I can judge from another video where he transmitted from his living room. It looks like that, right? And just another angle. It says here, Christoph Koch is a German-American neuropsychologist and computational neuroscientist, best known for his work on the neural basis of consciousness. He is a president of the Allen Institute for Brain Science in Seattle, and he is the chief scientist at the Tiny Blue Dot Foundation. That must be Earth, that tiny blue dot, right? Bernardo Kastrup is an idealist philosopher and the executive director of Essential Foundation. His work has been leading the modern renaissance. Fuck off, man. Of metaphysical idealism, the notion that reality is essentially mental. In this episode, they debate about analytic idealism, the integrated information theory, psychedelic trips, and death. It's also this psychedelia and philosophy. I'm like, no thank you, right? A glass of red wine now and then is fine. And if you want to have smoke a cigar, get a little, but psychedelia and going to another realm in your mind, and it's like, no. This is people who are having a serious existential crisis, I would say, right? People who are in a crisis state, you can't trust their philosophy, right? You have to be fucking mentally together. Otherwise, first of all, it's hard enough being completely normal, so to say, and not screw up some basics in your philosophy. I have never used any kind of psychedelia. I have never used. When I was young, it was more common to drink and smoke, right, than it is now. When I was young in the 80s and the 90s, right, it was common to drink whenever possible. You know, in working environments, in the lunch hour, right, people would drink beer. People would drink a pint of beer, right? And it was common to drink beer in the workplace and so on. You never see that anymore, right? You never see smoking either, right? But when I was young, it was common to smoke in the trains. There were particular, as every third train or fourth train or something like, or carriage was a smoking train, and all smokers sat in there, and it was basically you have to carve your way through smoke to get through it, right? And I was also sit there because I was a smoker, right? Back then, at least. So it's like, no, that's just a side note, right? But beyond that, I have tried marijuana once, and I got sick, and I've never done it since, right? So at this point in time, I really like not to have anything screwing around with my brain, right? It is enough to try to handle my own philosophy and try to deconstruct others' philosophy. I don't want something to screw around with my mind or my brain, if that's what. And you could also say, how does that function in an idealist world? If you are, if your representation of something you call psychedelia is a mental representation of something else that is mental, then something mental inflicts itself on your mentality, which is because everything is mind according to them, right? So it's mind inflicting on other mind. How does it do that? Does his normal mind disappear and some other mind is there to screw it up, or how does this? What is that screwing up mind version? Is that a demonic kind of mind, or falling from grace mind, or when you dig deep in this idealism, right? It is basically a circular argument, in my opinion, right? If you dig into it, it's a circular argument. You're standing in your bucket, as is also the problem with, as I pointed out recently, or yesterday, or the day before, in the criticism integrated information theory. It's basically saying, I'm using my experience to come up with a story of what goes on before my experiences that are responsible for my experiences. I would say it would actually be more correct to say that metaphysics is before your experience rather than beyond your experiences, right? As if you can't reach through this, the old dome, that's sort of the painting of the guy reaching through the dome there, right? It's actually rather more correct, in my opinion, to say, if there's a metaphysics, in the imagination of it at least, I'm not saying that you have access to the metaphysics necessarily, right? Is something before your experience. Because otherwise you wouldn't be able to say that it impinges, as Bernardo Kastrup says, right? So it has to be before. It has to be one or more steps before it becomes an experience. Because that creates that imagined relation between what is before that which becomes your experience. So there's some impingement there, right? But it's all imaginary. It's all imagined, right? It is based on the old default setting that your experiences is an outside of your experiences, right? While the idealist, as Bernardo Kastrup, he says, well, then that it's not an outside, it's an inside. But he keeps that outside. But that was just a built-in. It was what's it called? When you take something for granted and don't even think you have to argue for it. He keeps that, even though he says, no, I only have an outside. Inside, he keeps that outside as if it's still given to him, right? I've criticized that a lot, right? That should give you some warning signs about his ability to scrutinize his own thinking, in my opinion. Okay, with that out of the way, 15 minutes of ranting, right? There, excuse me. Integrated information theory at 7:59. Let's just jump into that, right? Let's see if I can get it going. Sometimes it's a little slow. Let me try again. I don't know what the hell is going on here.
Just as Christoph is sort of approaching other metaphysical.
Maybe I should start all over and then try to jump in. I don't know why it's so. Experience interruptions? Oh, I sure am, but I don't want to find out why at the moment. So, I'm sort of 15 minutes, 18 minutes into this, so I want to get it going. Sorry about it. Let me see if I can fix it. I hope it did. I have some trouble with my laptop here intermittently, so it might all of a sudden, just shut down. And I have some restart problems that I haven't been able to fix. It doesn't seem like that, but maybe it's sort of the internet connection that is has a hiccup or something. Ah, damn. I hate when this happens, right? I hate to waste my time. Come on. Maybe they have censored me. I'm not allowed. I could also stop this and make a part 2. It usually doesn't take this long. I don't know what the hell is wrong. There's no problem with the internet connection apparently. The VPN and there's something.
So if the brain is not there, there is still mind, but it's mind at large, not mind concentrated in a...
Okay, let's try from the right place. It must be some hiccup in the internet connection. It has to be. Usually it doesn't take this long to...
Just as Christoph is sort of approaching other metaphysical
We'll take it from here.
possibilities over the past months, couple of years. I have been approaching the view he has been supporting for a while, him and Giulio Tononi, which is a particular theory of consciousness called integrated information theory, which aims...
Okay, so it's a theory of consciousness. He says it's a theory of consciousness. So it's science, right? A theory is science. When you have a theory of gravity, for instance, you're trying to describe something you don't have access to. But you have something going on your dashboard, to stay with his analogy, right? That has a certain pattern, let's say, right? And you're taking all the objects that seem to be participating in that scenario and describe them in a theory about an aspect you call gravity. But you're not experiencing gravity. You're experiencing shit moving about, right? If I take my beaver, maybe I should find something else than a beaver. I don't like to kill beavers, right? I take my car keys, right? I think I used that before. You stand at the bottom on the ground and you look up the Eiffel Tower. You have your car keys, then you take your car keys and walk up the Eiffel Tower and stand on the first ledge, and then you drop your car keys. Or you let go of your car keys, and your car keys start to move down until it hits the ground, which is the surface of Earth, right? Then you can go down, grab your car keys, walk up to the first ledge, what are they called, right? Drop your car keys and they will fall, possibly, I suppose, right? That's what I would expect. And if I had that experience, I could start to make, okay, there's something going on here. What is that? Well, that which I can't explain, I would call that gravity. I'm not experiencing gravity. I'm experiencing Earth. I'm experiencing Eiffel Tower. I'm experiencing myself, you could say, right? But I'm just carrying the car keys and I'm experiencing the car keys. I'm not experiencing gravity. Gravity is a story. It's a theory. Theories are scientific stories based on empiricism. And the empiricism is, I am observing these particular cognitions, Earth, Eiffel Tower, car keys, behave in a certain way. And I'm describing them using a theory called gravity. If this is the case, if you have Earth, if you have Eiffel Tower, if you can carry your car keys and you let go of them, this will happen. That's a theory. Can you have a theory about consciousness? No, because what you are using when you're making theories are the cognitions within consciousness, right? If you want to have this broken line I've put around my so-called ontology here, right? And I'm working on an improved version of this, right? And a more elaborate maybe also, right? I want to get to the complete picture, right? That if you call this broken line, if you call that consciousness, then cognitions are a part of consciousness. So if you're saying you're doing a theory of consciousness, you are using your cognitions. You're using that consciousness to come up with whatever story about something you don't have access to, right? It has to be something you don't have access to, otherwise it's not a theory. Then it's a part of your ontology, right? You can't explain colors. You can't explain cognitions. You can't explain beaver, right? You can only say, but it has this color and this shape and so on, which is the qualia, right? So when you're theorizing, you're creating a story about what is going on based on what is there and how it moves about, right? So you can make a theory about consciousness if it's basically the contents of your ontology, because that is just what you have, right? You can make a theory about it. So you're making a theory which is basically attempt to make a philosophical superstring called mind that is responsible for all this that goes on in your so-called ontology. But you're using that ontology to get there. You're using the qualia, the cognitions, and the abstraction to get there. So you're standing in your fucking bucket and trying to lift yourself up, right? So it's stupid. It's fucking stupid, right? And as I point out a lot of times, it's always, and it's not always, but usually, almost always, right? The problems are at the foundations. The big leaps, the unfounded argumentation and so on, it's always at the beginning, right? And then they can excuse themselves into create all sorts of elaborate calculations and all sorts of shit based on these flawed foundations. Right? But that's where I'm to point out, no, you can't that. It's bullshit, right? You can't do it. I'm not trusting this, right?
Initially thought was just a physicalist theory, and from 2017 I started understanding that it was not so. It's a theory that honors the nature of experience.
It honors the nature of experience, but it's also an interesting, description, phrasing, to say it's a nature of experience. They're always walking around direct experience. Direct experience is not interesting, apparently, right? Yeah, this is just qualia and cognitions. But I want to get to what it really is. The nature of qualia, the nature of cognitions, right? Who cares? Who says it has a nature? I mean, it's this creating the idea of a nature and then abstracting what its likeness from it. And then they have created a whole set of new categories. Then they can go and spend some other people's tax money on studying for 20 years without getting anywhere, right? I'm sick and tired of these people, to be honest, right? And their bullshit philosophy.
It's based on tenets or axioms that are derived from introspection.
Axioms that are derived from introspection. I never really understood what is introspection. Do you mean philosophy? Introspection, what is that? I am thinking inwards. It sounds like an Indian guru or something like that, right? But give me the thought process. It would be nice to have somebody in the presentation from Giulio Tononi. He just, shot through a number of interesting avenues like metaphysics, ontology, and foundational axioms and shit within 5 minutes without disclosing how he got to various shit, right? I would like somebody in information integrated theory, integrating IIT, to give me the exact ontology they're working from. They must be agreeing on the ontology, otherwise they couldn't work together, right? What is the ontology? Where does my apple and my tomatoes fit into this, right? And just give me the basics. It's just thrown up in, introspecting, ontology. Okay, now I go and calculate. Oh, hang on, dude, right? You don't just get to say the word ontology and then I'll be satisfied. No.
Recognition.
And also, I would say I am curious about the axiomatic approach. Because that's sort of off my ball game. That's all right up my alley, right? That we're working from axioms now, right? And he says axioms that are based on introspection. So what he might be saying is something like, and I'm, interpreting it, right? That it is philosophically based rather than scientifically based. So you're thinking about your experience rather than measuring your experience and coming up with a theory that way, right? But the point is, if it's a theory, which is apparently called, it's a IIT, the T is for theory, then it should be scientific then, in my opinion. You can have theories about something that is not scientific, because that's what a theory is. Everything else, what else is there, right? If you look at my ontology here, right, I can't find any more than this. There's sort of, there's a cognitive apparatus, of course, that is responsible for doing the cognitions, yeah. It's not a part of the ontology as such, but it's a part of the overall philosophy, maybe, right? It's sort of a meta-ontology, maybe you could say. I'm still working on that, right? But what you have direct access to as a phenomena as such, right? Because a cognitive apparatus is not a phenomena necessarily, right? The what is going on my flat TV screen is not the TV screen. That's the light emitted, whatever you want to call it. The colors on the screen is not the screen. There's more to it than that, right? But if the phenomenology, the phenomena of the TV screen is the colors, so to say, right? And maybe sounds, right? So it's sort of a limitation of what we are talking about when we're doing ontology. Ontology is what there is. So you could also say, well, does ontology also cover what is responsible for what there is? So it's a sort of a gray area, right? And I don't like gray areas, but it has to be done in somehow. So they were working on a more elaborate version than this one. Not that I'm going to change it. The basics are still the same, but there might be other aspects to make sure that that you understand where I'm coming from, right? But what would that be? I mean, there are color, sound, smell, taste, and touch, right? Then there are sort of elephants and tomatoes, which is category B, cognitions. And then there are all sorts of abstractions from that. Well, I have an idea of physics, I have an idea of ethics, I have an idea of epistemology, and so on and so on. These are abstractions from these experiences called qualia and cognitions. Physics or science is observing the patterns of the behavior of the cognitions and coming up with theories about it, right? That's at least the starting point of theories. But then I would say then that theorizing is confined to physics, right? You can't theorize about ethics because it's a separate category of abstractions. We're doing something else than physics. So if you're just applying theory wherever you want, you're sort of fucking around with the categories, right? In my opinion. So therefore, I would say a theory is confined to physics, right? When I go down and in my grocery store to buy tomatoes, I don't have a theory of tomatoes, do I? Right? I don't need a theory of tomatoes. I need to cognize fucking tomatoes, right? I basically have to trust my cognitions. And there might be the quality of the cognitions. If the tomato is green or blue, I might not want it, right? So there's some free will aspect incorporated somewhere there, right? But there are all sorts of shit you can do with all sorts of abstractions that can arrive from these category A and B. But within each abstraction, there are certain things that goes on and are described in a certain way that have to have other terms used in other categories if you're doing something sort of similar. If you're thinking you're doing a theory of epistemology or theory of truth or something like that, you're violating the idea of theory, in my opinion. Because you're not trying to... If you're trying to get to knowledge, you're trying to define what you mean by knowledge, right? That has to be a direct pointing to cognitions, in my opinion, because that's the prior step in the interconnectivity of the ontology, described in your ontology. Theories are confined to science or physics, right? Physics in the most general term of it, right? So I don't like the use of theory when you're dealing with with something that is basically philosophical, right? Philosophy is infinitely more foundational than science. Science is sort of a third level offspring of, observations of cognitions. There's a hell of a lot more going on than science, right? So scientism is stupid.
Of what experience is.
You want to explain a bit more simple about this theory for me and the audience to understand.
Yeah, but the audience is stupid. They are as stupid as I am. Well, who is this dude, man, right? Yeah. See, Bernardo there, he's this stupid idiot. He's a useful idiot. I can use him. Yes, he can push my agenda, right? He's not calling me up to scrutinize his shit, right? He's not making me the vice president of Essentia Foundation, right? Because I'm going to fuck it all up with good thinking, right? I wouldn't.
Yeah, so
I wouldn't participate, but you know what I mean, right?
Christoph mentioned what is popular today is a form of functionalism. What it says is that consciousness is the outcome of something the brain does. Like software does something, and then out comes.
I'm not sure if that is a straw man, right? There might be somebody who says that brain produces mind or something like that. Produces phenomena. But look at it this way, right? And this is sort of an essential philosophical argument I would push, right? If you have a sword, and this is a thought experiment, mind you, please don't do this at home, right? It's a thought experiment, and I disclaim this, right? Listen carefully, this is a thought experiment. If you have a sword, right? If I had a sword here in my hand, let's say, right? I would expect this, but it's an axiom I'm working from, right? Or an explanation of the axiom, maybe. If I take this sword, or what's it called? These you can stick someone with, fencing tool, right? If you stick it in the laptop, would your experience expire? I would expect not, right? If I stick it in my sofa, would my experience expire? I think not. If I could stick it in my tomatoes, in my car, try to stab my car keys, try to whatever, right? Even if I stab my neighbor, don't do this at home, right? Would my experience expire? No, I don't think so, right? What if I took this saber and shot it through my head? Maybe a couple of times, right? Would my experience expire? I would expect so, right? It's an axiom. So what's the difference between all the other shit? I expect that my experience is confined to something inside this skull, right? But my experience is that which I'm describing now. It is the sword. It is me and my beard and my sofa and my CD collection back there and so on, right? That's the experience I would be killing if I rammed a sword through my skull. That's where it is. So what I have is the whole experience, but it's actually confined in here. And that's why I can't experience my experience. It's sort of a black hole. I can't get to the center of my brain, so to say, without destroying the experience. Because this is the experience. This is the this is the potentially paradoxical understanding, right? If you say your mind is in here, you are pointing to an experience that doesn't show where your mind is. Only by saying, I'm only showing where it isn't. I hope you can follow me. But this is the black hole in the center of your experience is where the actual experience is. Then what you are experiencing as something outside is actually something you don't have access to, because it's reversed into the experience is where you have no experience. You understand my... So, why did I talk about this? I have to get back. So I lost a bit of my train of thought here. The point is, it's very difficult to put into words this without making it sound like complete craziness, right? Bad craziness, as Disneyland After Dark saying. Bad craziness. If I'm working on I actually presented these thoughts way back when I did some idealism metaphysics, when I still called my metaphysics idealism. Now I have scrapped that thinking because it's incorrect, right? So it is very much about making sure you're absolutely not bullshitting yourself when you're doing this foundational thinking, because one step in the wrong direction or a leap beyond the limitation of what and your whole philosophy is fucked up, right? The rest of your philosophy is fucked up. You are creating a paradox or a begging the question which made more or less be the same, right? That is where you allow yourself to draw some conclusions about something you can't draw conclusions about based on that basis, right? Because the basis is that which you're trying to explain, and then you can use that base to explain that base, right? That's why I'm pointing out all these shortcomings on these philosophies, because they're all fucked up, right? And these sort of semi-scientific people who are coming with their science educations and thinking that they can solve the philosophical problems of the ages, they're deluding themselves, man, right? Let me just create a formula and build a computer and I'll give you an explanation of tomatoes. It's fucked up, man, right? It's like, why? I don't need an explanation of tomatoes, and I can't get to an explanation, right? You're way better off doing some rigid philosophy than trying to come up with some kind of formula for tomatoes, right?
Consciousness. And if something else would be a simulation of what the brain does, then out comes consciousness as well. And both of us disagree with the functionalism. We think we have to honor the causal powers of the substrate. So in the case of the brain...
So it's a computation. So these theories would say consciousness...
So now Christoph breaks in and says, yeah, these are conversations.
Ultimately, a clever hack. If you write the right code and implement it on the right machine, the machine will be conscious.
Yeah, and we both disagree with that. We think it is, frankly...
Why are you talking... So human beings are kind of machines or what? Well, you don't know that, because that machinery would be beyond your experiences then, right? So it's this, having your cake and eat it too. I'm refuting this, so now I'm going to use it. They can't see the built-in problems in what they're saying. It is kind of incredible, right? That these people, glorified, titles of PhD in philosophy and neuroscience and bullshit. They can't see the foundational problems in what they're saying, what they're presenting.
Nonsensical.
Because it's based on the material.
Nonsensical? You mean it's paradoxical? Or what?
Word, kind of.
No, see, if you're a functionalist, Christoph uses a much more polite example where we use my favorite...
Didn't this Phidias guy understand what he said? It's the old physicalist that, there are brains out there, and there will, experience will be, be extracted from brain. Tried to sound like Einstein or something like that. That brain produces mind. And it's both correct and incorrect, and it depends on what you actually mean when you say it, right? When you say brain, that which you are referring to, using the term brain, must be your experience of brain, right? Or it should be, maybe. But if you say, yeah, but I'm experiencing brain, so there must be something out there which is responsible for my experience of brain. There must be some object, let's say, out there, which is the actual, the thing itself in Kantian terms, right? And my experience of it is brain. But I don't know what it actually is, because I only have my experience of it. But if you then say that is the actual brain, well, then you're sort of confusing the use of the term brain. And that is one of the problems that confuses people, because are you talking about your experience, or are you talking about the thing itself when you say brain? Because to the best of my understanding of idealism is that they're talking about objects out there. Otherwise, why the hell would they have an integrated information theory if they don't believe that the brain is a placeholder for some actual object out there they're trying to, screw around with formulas to describe? So they are retracting the externality of brain into an internal experience, but then saying, yes, there's still some brainness, actual object out there beyond my experiences, that of which brain is a placeholder, right? It must be, otherwise I'm completely confused about what the hell they're doing, right?
Great metaphor. If you're a functionalist, not only about consciousness, but about everything related to the body, what the body does, you would say that if you have an accurate enough simulation of kidney function on your computer, and you make it more and more accurate until it's accurate down to the molecular level, then eventually your computer will pee on your desk, which is absurd. Because a simulation of something is not the thing simulated. A simulation of kidney function is not a kidney. Or your example, a simulation of a black hole is not a black hole. So you can run a simulation on your computer of a black hole.
Okay, so why don't you stick to that, right? Because your theory about what is going on beyond your experiences is just a theory. It's just a model of what might actually be out there. And furthermore, since it ultimately becomes the brain or the tomato or the bicycle that I have to use in my everyday anyway, why the fuck would I care about it, right? An abstract theory that you must have access to it, otherwise you couldn't have the theory. A theory is some kind of abstraction, and abstraction is a part of your consciousness, to use your term, right? So it can't be out there. It must be in there then. Whatever you're creating is a representation inside that which is a representation of an outside. So no matter what you do, will always be some kind of abstraction within you or somebody, right? It will never be that thing it is. As Immanuel Kant correctly said, you can never get to it, because what you can get to is your own kind of abstractions, which is a part of you, not the external world. Then you take that imaginary leap where you think you're jumping out into an external world that is pure imagination. That's why it's screwed. And the circularity, as I pointed out so many times now, which is, you must be basing that with these axioms you're working from in IIT must be based on qualia and cognitions. Otherwise, I don't know what the fuck they are, right? And I have no trust in it at all, right? I don't have that either way, but it would be even worse, right? Then you're using that base ontology to get to a metaphysics that is responsible for that base ontology, right? So it's circular. Either it's circular, if it changes your understanding of your ontology, you're creating a recursion of change. Then you change your ontology, then you have to create a new metaphysics because of the change. And that new metaphysics, if that changes your ontology, you need to go back and then you have this recursion, right? If it doesn't change understanding of your ontology, why the hell would I want it then, right? So no matter what, it's fucked up, right? It's make work for academics that can say, I have doing these fancy terms that nobody are, fancy calculations with monster computers that nobody understands. I'm just Tononi, I'm throwing words around it sounds so nice, and we are getting scientific progress into consciousness. Oh my God, right? Oh yes, it's just fucking make work, right? It's completely useless, right?
Oh, it's not going to suck you in, because a simulation doesn't have the causal powers of a black hole. A simulation of kidney function doesn't have the causal powers of kidneys. By the same token, a simulation of the brain doesn't have the causal powers of the structure of the brain.
But your causal powers, you're talking about your experiences, right? It seems to me, at least, that you are switching between that internal, external world, using your internal experiences to describe that external world. And you're just switching back and forth without any clarification of what the hell you're doing. I don't buy this. It's foundationally screwed, right? You have to say, in my opinion, either I'm a solipsist, there are experiences, and there's nothing beyond my experiences, right? And then you go and do whatever you want with those experiences. I don't care, right? Or you say, there is an external world to my experience, but I can't get to it. I am imagining that external world. That means precisely that I cannot describe it, because it's an imagination, right? I can imagine something on the far side of Mars. That doesn't mean I can therefore all of a sudden start to describe the landscape and the trees and the mountains and whatever, right? Just because I came up with a story about what is on the far side of Neptune or whatever, right? It's this building imaginations upon imaginations upon imaginations, right? It cannot be trusted. Because you always, if you make an abstraction from your cognition, that abstraction has to point back to the cognition. Otherwise, you're fooling yourself and you are trying to fool me, whether or not you understand it or not. Because if you leave in an abstraction that doesn't point back to cognitions, you are taking a balloon to your cloud castles and your imagination land, right? We might as well discuss orcs in Middle-earth. It's equally valid. This just sounds more philosophical and scientific and so on, and more trustworthy, but it isn't, right? It isn't. I think I have to break this up in two parts. So the 1041, and it goes all the way to 1952, right? So I'll make a part 2 of this one, right? To really get into deep with integrated information theory, right? Okay. Have a nice day. See you in the next one.